Good afternoon and welcome to today's session, which is on bringing educational innovations to market. My name is Carrie Friedman. I am a principal researcher at SRI and director of the Learn Network. You can go on. So our Learn Network is funded by the Institute of Education Sciences to support scaling of evidence-based practices and programs, which have the potential to accelerate learning. And the network includes a group of research and development teams that are also funded by IES to enhance their existing reading and math programs and get them ready to be scaled. And as the network lead, we facilitated training and coaching and some collaborative activities with these teams to help build their capacity for scale. And through these efforts, we were able to build out our framework and our tools. And this workshop series is really going to help to further share those resources out and hopefully bring them to life. So today we're going to focus on go-to-market planning and specifically how you get the right message to the right people across the right channels. Sometimes as researchers and developers, this marketing know-how can sometimes feel out of reach. But what we've tried to do with this go-to-market planning with our teams and throughout our development of the tools and resources, we've been able to hone in on something that I think feels authentic and accessible for researchers and developers, but can also be really effective and impactful in the marketplace. So if we go into our agenda today, we're going to start with a little grounding, and then we're going to move into walking through the steps in our two-phase approach to go-to-market planning, which is your internal planning and then your execution. And then we'll just end with a short recap of takeaways and some potential next steps. I'm really excited to have my colleague Julie Kelleher here today. Her insights and tools and support has been really invaluable in our network. And I'm going to let Julie introduce herself and her role in supporting the transition from research to market.
Great. Thanks so much, Carrie. And I'm really happy to be here. So a little bit of background on me. So after 5 years as a classroom teacher, I found my way to EdTech and have been helping companies from startup to scale up to enterprise and nonprofits bring their products and services to education markets. And that means that I've held leadership roles in market research, market strategy, marketing, sales enablement, and kind of everything in between, which is what I call the go-to-market continuum. And so during this 18 years that I've been working in EdTech, I've helped more than 20 companies bring more than 70 products, services, new releases to market with what I like to call a market-first mindset. And that's really what I've found to be a common indicator of success. So I'll share what I mean by that in just a bit, and you'll hear that theme throughout, really, the market-first mindset. So thanks for taking your time to come and learn with us today. So jumping right into the market-first mindset. So here's an overview of what I mean by that. So, first, I think we can all agree that we're here today because we're passionate about, or at least interested in, bringing educational innovations to schools, districts, institutions, anywhere where education is provided. And when it comes to bringing educational innovations to market, adopting a market-first mindset is really essential. And you'll hear me reference this throughout. And my goal is to really help you identify opportunities where you can adopt this mindset and expand this mindset throughout how you bring your products and services and programs to market. So here, if we look at just this slide on the left, I define a market-first mindset as something where you start with your audience's needs rather than your own assumptions. Instead of asking, who will this innovation I've developed help, you might ask, what problems do educators and students actually need solved? So, if you think about it, market first is, I really understand the specific problem people face. Now I'm going to develop the right solution for them. And the alternative, which is actually quite common in EdTech, is product first. I've developed this amazing innovation. Now I need to find people who will use it. So, this product first mindset is not unusual. It's very common, and it's, particularly common when somebody's a founder. And, and you can kind of think of it as founder's bias, a solution looking for a problem, or if you've ever seen the movie Field of Dreams, it's this belief that if you build it, they will come. And, unlike that movie, users don't come flooding in because something is built. They're really going to search for something that really addresses a need and a challenge. And so here's a way that I like to illustrate this. And this kind of came about in my work with the Learn Network over the past year. A great way to illustrate market versus product first is this, consumer example. And, I'll just caveat this and say that, selling ice cream is not, or even delivering ice cream to target audiences is not the same as bringing in educational innovation to district schools or institutions, but it helps illustrate this concept of market versus product first. So if you've been to Trader Joe's and you've been to the ice cream section, they have these hold the cone mini ice cream cones, and they're targeting their target audience are families, children, portion conscious adults, snacker consumers. So I'm a parent, and I like to have little treats for my kids, so I'm definitely their target audience. And so just this is an example of their packaging. And if you look at the packaging on the left, you can see that somebody's holding it. It's pretty small. It's got this cute name, Hold the Cone. And this just kind of shows you this is what we see when we go to potentially purchase something or decide to implement something. And what if instead of this image on the right, you went to the ice cream section and it looked like this on the left? It just said 8 cones, 7.9 ounces, and listed all the ingredients and all the nutritional facts, and the text got smaller and smaller as you looked at this. This is an example of product first. And you can think of this like if you were to consider purchasing some software to help you and your team operationally, you would not look at all the details and all the tech specs first. You would first try to understand if it actually addresses your needs and helps you overcome some specific challenges. So over on the right, this is a very market first presentation, clever naming. You know that it's a tiny ice cream cone. The target audience is definitely going to identify with this. And the packaging over here really speaks to me if I'm their target audience. So we just thought this would be a good way to illustrate this. And again, this is not to say that this is even close to how an educational innovation would be packaged, but it's to illustrate that the product first trap is really easy for organizations, for innovators to just list everything that's in it at first because they're so excited about it. But we really have to start with who's the audience, who are we trying to reach, and what's going to resonate with them first.
Yeah, I really love that example. And that is a product I buy, also a parent looking for a small sweet treat. And I just, every time I see them now, I think of that, and it's helped me understand that definition. So market first mindset is not something we're only going to apply when we have this final product, we're ready to launch, we're going to have to sell those cones. It's something that's relevant at every stage of innovation. And if you were on our last workshop or you've reviewed our toolkit, you might be familiar with the Learn Network's Invent, Apply, Transition framework, which is a systematic approach for scaling, and it includes key stages of innovation from that needs gathering early on where you're doing your initial design and development in the invent stage to testing and improving in the apply stage, and then forging that path to scale and transition. And all of these stages, it's really important to have an authentic understanding of your users and other key players working in this space, what their motivations and their needs are, anchoring your design, your development, your planning in what they need and what appeals to them. And then, of course, when you're bringing that product to market. And so today we're going to start at the end, and we're going to start by introducing you to go-to-market planning, which is part of the transition phase. And what we heard in our last session was that that's sort of the piece that us as researchers and developers are often the least familiar with. But even if you're not quite at that transition phase and ready to launch your go-to-market strategy, the understanding of how to plan for this and how to infuse that market first mindset can really be helpful to inform any stage of development that you're at.
And I'll just add one little note. You may see terms like customer, market, sales, marketing used frequently. And these exercises and frameworks are relevant whether your offering is something that people will pay for or they will access for free. So, I like to say that if you have a good or a service that other people will use for free or for a fee, then a go-to-market strategy and plan is essential.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, that's really important. I also want to flag that there are a couple really helpful resources in our Learn to Scale toolkit that are going to help you with planning to transition from research to market. And that's where our go-to-market playbook and our scaling plan guide can be found. So if you go to our website and click on our toolkit in that transition section, you'll find those resources. Today, we're going to be going through some activities that are in the go-to-market playbook. So we're going to drop in the chat an attachment for you to download. And so if you want, you can follow along with us. You can even, start filling things out for your own product or program that you're thinking about today. I did want to let you know that this is a slightly updated version from what's on the website now. So you're kind of getting a sneak peek of a new and improved version. And then finally, before we move to getting really deep into go-to-market planning, I just wanted to put a further plug in for our toolkit. Plentiful resources that are tailored to the different stages of innovation. So after today, please check it out. And we'll get to that go-to-market planning, Julie.
Yep. And I'll just echo, it is a wealth of information, the Learn to Scale toolkit. So definitely check it out. So starting with kind of the end in mind, let's define go-to-market and what we mean by it. So really, and I kind of alluded to this before, but go-to-market, also sometimes referred to as GTM, it's the process or approach that an organization or individual uses to bring a product or service to the people who will use or buy it. And it covers how you plan to reach potential users, introduce the product to them, and make it available for purchase or use. And just here on this slide, I like to break it down into, if you have a good or service, which is your offer, that you want other people to use your market for free or for a fee. So that's really your packaging. So and pricing. So you offer it in a certain package and it has a price or it doesn't. Then you really need a go-to-market strategy. And we're going to spend some time going deeper into this. So what is a go-to-market strategy? So we just defined go-to-market, but now let's define the strategy and the plan that you will need to get your product or service into the hands of your target audience, your ideal audience, your users and/or your customers. So really, a go-to-market strategy is a clear step-by-step plan for how you'll introduce a new product or service or an enhancement to a product or service to the people who might want to use it. It answers questions like, who are my ideal users? What problems do our products or services solve for them? How are they going to find out about it? Where and how will they be able to access it? And so the goal is to really make sure you have this comprehensive plan to make sure that your offer reaches the right people at the right time with the right message across the right channels. And I'll go into details on each of those a little bit further. And here we've developed it together as this 7-step go-to-market strategy. So this is something that none of these concepts are new. They've been around for decades. And what I've done is I've tried to, in collaboration with the Learn Network, is package this in a way where it's really accessible and helps people follow a step-by-step path, no matter where you are in your journey. You could have a little bit of experience in go-to-market. You could have no experience in go-to-market. And the toolkit and the playbooks are really intended to help you go through this step-by-step and really build a strategy and plan that's going to help get your innovation to your target audience. So these 7 key steps, I like to break them down into kind of 2 phases. So on the left, the ones that are in yellow, these are the internal planning steps. This is where you have a market first mindset, value-based positioning, you craft your messaging, and then that transition to external execution is when you define your channel strategy. And that's where you activate, you drive interest and decision, you grow adoption and advocacy. So we'll spend time going through each of these today. I won't spend time on the grow adoption and advocacy, but I'm going to walk you through some frameworks on how we can follow this step-by-step approach. So first, starting with part 1, internal planning, let's begin with the end in mind. So many of you may be familiar with Stephen Covey, and there's a quote here that to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. And this is, to me, similar to having a market first mindset. And that's why it's the fundamental first step in any go-to-market strategy. And there are kind of 3 subcategories in here. The first one is know your audience. You need to know your audience, then you need to know the market landscape, and you also need to know your competition. And knowing your audience means developing your ideal customer profile and the attributes of the individuals who will benefit from your offer. Knowing the market landscape is, where does your offering fit in the market ecosystem? If it's a literacy intervention, what other literacy interventions are out there? If it's a math intervention, what else is out there? If it's, an analytics solution. So knowing the market landscape is really helpful. And then the competition. And an interesting thing about competition is that sometimes do it yourself or doing nothing, your target audience doing nothing, that's a form of competition. So we'll go into this in a little bit more detail next. So here's an example of what knowing your audience, a kind of a starting point for knowing your audience. And we're using a K-12 example, but there are other examples for higher ed or other kind of education markets. And here, this is a way to kind of think through, all right, I have an offer. Let's say it's a math program, and who's going to benefit from this? And who are all the people that help determine that this offer is right for the school district or students or what have you? And so this is just a generic organizational chart of a K-12 district, and the kind of the circles with the letters in them represent who might be decision makers, who might be gatekeepers, who might be influencers, who might be end users. And so this is kind of a helpful place to start. You may have an innovation and you're focused on primarily the end user, which is great. And then when you think about how do I bring it to market, thinking about the whole tapestry of key players is really helpful. And then when it comes to knowing the market landscape, this is really about understanding the whole tapestry of other providers that may be offering something similar to what you offer, or maybe trying to address the same use case that you offer. And so here's an example of a market landscape that was taken from an organization called Hull IQ. There's a lot of landscape maps out here like this. So if you are less familiar with the use case or the market that you're trying to serve, you could look at an education map like this and really get a sense of who else is out there, which will ultimately help you determine what your differentiators are. And then that dovetails nicely into knowing your competition. And I've spent a lot of time over the past 18 years focused on competitive work. And there are, on the left here, the what's in their offer. That's kind of like the table stakes competitive analysis framework. And then over on the right is another one that I'm going to share a little bit more about. But my point of view is that having a multi-frame view into competitive intelligence is really important. So of course, it's important to know what's in their offer. So I call that the competitive comparison matrix on the left. So what are their features? What are their capabilities? What do those features and capabilities do? How do they work? And what does it mean? What does that feature or capability mean? Or why does it matter for the target audience? So a simple way to think about this is what it is, what it does, and what it means. And you can do this at the product level, at the feature level, at the services level. This is just a helpful framework to build out a larger competitive comparison framework. And then over on the right is an example of what I call the buyer's journey scorecard. So this is kind of like a frame that I have developed over probably the past 5 years of another way to look at the competition. And that's how do they go to market? And I like to pretend like I'm a potential decision maker for their offer. If I know, like based on that landscape map, who my primary competitors are, I pretend like I'm trying to find out as much as I can about their offer. I look to find out how do they package their offer? Is pricing easy to find? If there is pricing, or if it's free, is that really easy to find? How do they position the offer? What kind of messaging do they have? Does it speak to me? Does it speak to my needs? Where can I find out about this? Is it on their website? Do I hear about it in email? Is it in digital ads? How easy is it to find this information? And then is there a way for me to try it before I decide? That's this concept of buyer-led marketing. So I would propose, as you embark on any sort of competitive intelligence initiative, to think about these two frameworks and and try them out to see if they help broaden your view. And that's a lot of information to try to gather. I realized we talk about gathering information about your audience, about the landscape, about the competition. And this is where AI can be an incredible accelerator across your go-to-market strategy, planning and execution workflows. And I will caveat here, just like this yellow box is calling out, it does not replace expertise, but it really does help expand your capacity and boost your productivity if you have a lean team, if you're trying to do this on your own, or if you just want to kind of validate what you already have researched and what your assumptions are, and see if there's maybe some more information that could help inform your strategy. So what I've found AI to be really helpful for is a great brainstorming partner, a research assistant, a creative collaborator. And, I will say that it is, just as this yellow box says, it's an input, not an output. Always validate, modify, and personalize. And you are the subject matter expert of your offer, your product, and ideally your market. But to help kind of accelerate this path for you, I did put together this custom GPT that is available for free, and it is intended to help walk you through these steps. And so if you want to give it a try, you can. Totally optional. But I'll introduce some other ways that AI could help accelerate if you wanted to try.
And I'll just add, I think what you can validate all of this in the field, if you have people using your product, maybe as part of an evaluation, you're asking them questions anyway and seeing how it's working. What would you have used to do this before? Or, if you're not going to continue using this, what are you going to use next? And talking to people at conferences, asking them, how do you deal with this particular problem? What do you use? That can give you a good sense of what's actually happening out there, especially if you can talk to places that are sort of your ideal profile for where you want to see your product grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Blending it. Yeah. If speaking to the target audience directly is always the best. All right. So now we're going to jump into one more topic, and then we're going to jump into some interactive activities that Carrie and I will model. So once we know all of those things, once we have that market first mindset, then we can begin to develop value-based positioning. And this is something that really helps you communicate your product's real world impact by focusing on the outcomes that matter most to your target audiences. So instead of just listing features like that example of a Trader Joe's ice cream box that just had the ingredients on it, the value-based positioning really shows how your product solves key problems, saves time potentially, and delivers meaningful results. So I love this definition from an organization called Product Growth Leaders. I've referenced this for years, and really strong product positioning defines what it is, who it's for, and why they should care. And it explains how and why your product or service is different and better from the alternatives already available. So if you think back to those three components that I just spoke about, you have to know your target audience to really understand who it's for. You have to understand the landscape and the competition to be able to identify how your offer is different. And this is really an essential part of go-to-market strategy and planning. And I will say that I've seen countless times examples where there's a rush to develop messaging and get the word out without spending the time on developing value-based positioning. And that's where messaging can fall flat. So this step is sometimes overlooked, and it's something that I always advocate for spending some time on, because it will really pay off as you get to the external part of go-to-market. So now we'll do an activity, audience value mapping, and these activities are also all in the playbook available on the toolkit, the Learn toolkit, and there are templates in there that you can use. So we'll walk you through them, but the toolkit is there and the playbook is there for you to use whenever you want. So here's a simple table for target audience value mapping. And to begin this value-based positioning exercise, let's start with our target audience's priorities, the challenges standing in their way, and mapping it based on, are they a decision maker? Are they an end user? Are they an implementer? And this is a framework that you'll start to see we build upon as we go into the other activities. And we're going to actually go through a sample scenario to illustrate these, because we just think it may help to kind of put all this together. So here we have a fictitious product, and it is a product called Number Heroes, and Carrie is going to play the founder and product leader. And this Number Heroes product is for K through 3 students in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. The implementer of this product are teachers, and decision makers are building leaders, principals, curriculum leaders. They're going to determine if this is a program worth taking time out of the, kindergarten through 3rd grade day for teachers to have their students use. And we have some benefits here. It builds strong math foundations. It helps develop confident learners with problem-based learning. It's motivating and engaging, and it boosts engagement through gamification and student choice. So we're going to use this example as we go through these activities moving forward. So starting with the target audience value mapping, we have here key players that we would want to think about. Decision makers could be principal, district math specialist. Implementers could be teachers. End users would definitely be students. And so we would want to ask, what are their main objectives? What are their strategic priorities? And what are the challenges and what stands in their way of achieving those objectives. So if you think about identify their main objectives, then identify what stands in the way of achieving those objectives. So if we were to do this for the Number Heroes program, this is what it could potentially look like. And Carrie, I don't know if you want to speak to this example.
Sure. I think if just go back one, when you're thinking about who these people are, the key players, we do have some resources in the toolkit to sort of help you identify these people. But we also have done a research study on sort of district and school procurement practices. And if you access some of our briefs, and we have a forthcoming data dashboard, it'll show you, who's really involved in the decision making in different types of schools and districts. And so that's a really great resource to go to. And then again, also just talking to the people you're working with and really understanding the dynamics there can help you figure out who those key players are.
Yep. And in some cases, if you have an innovation that's for a particular type of educational organization and you actually worked in one of those, then you are a subject matter expert, and you probably have access to others too. So that's a great point to gather this information from individuals if you can, and conducting your own research.
Yes, I'd say for my Number Heroes example, and in thinking about, the decision maker being the principal here, you might think about principals really care about building those strong foundational skills, closing achievement gaps for their students, and then also supporting effective instruction for their teachers. And what often can get in their way would be, there's all different levels of math proficiency in our school, and we're having difficulty motivating students. I've seen inconsistent instructional approaches across teachers, and at the same time, we're really resource constrained, and it's hard to have maybe multiple teachers to help with that differentiation.
That's great. And so Carrie, playing here the product leader and the founder of Number Heroes, she's mapped out just looking at the decision maker. And remember, we also have implementer and end user. But if you're just looking at the decision maker role, she understands the main objectives of principals. She understands what's standing in the way of achieving those objectives. And those are key inputs to the next few phases. And just another example here where if you are potentially serving a market that you're not familiar with and you don't have access to individuals who serve in that role, or let's say you want to help superintendents and it's not that easy to interview a superintendent one-on-one, you could also turn to AI with an option using prompts like this, and there are prompts available in the playbook, and same caveat as before, totally optional, and always validate it, but it's a way to either kind of boost some of the research that you're doing, or if you're starting from scratch, a way to kind of get started and understand your target audience. So now that we've done the target audience value mapping, we're going to go to the next activity, which builds on that. And that's defining your portfolio and packaging to map to audience value. So here, also all of these templates, as I mentioned before, are all available in the playbook, the go-to-market playbook that's available on the Learn Toolkit. Here's a simple table. And really, if you think about any offer that you're going to bring to an educational organization or the education market, it likely has some combination of what's included in this table. Maybe there are services, maybe there's content or curriculum, maybe there's product and technology, or maybe there's not. Maybe there are strategic partnerships, maybe you have a community component. So this is just a simple framework to think through, all right, what is included in our offer? And this, by starting here, it's ultimately going to help you figure out how you're going to talk to the market about it and your target audience about it. So this can be a quick exercise if you already have an offer that's in the market or ready to launch. This should be a quick exercise. So Carrie, let's take a look at what this might look like for Number Heroes. Thinking about your innovation, could you easily map components of Number Heroes to this type of table?
Sure. So for the services, we do offer professional learning and training for teachers. And our content and curriculum follows, a specific scope and sequence for grades K to 3. that is aligned with foundational math concepts. The product is a gamified digital learning tool. And in terms of partnerships, right now we're partnering with a large urban district on an evaluation. But I could also foresee partnering with a technology vendor that maybe this product helps supplement, or maybe with a consortium or association to be able to reach more districts. In terms of community, we do have a community chat platform for teachers who are using the product where they can connect, and we can also offer support.
Great. Thank you. And this is an example of this. This should be a pretty quick exercise if you already have your offer ready to launch, or it could be an exercise to help you uncover, oh, maybe we do want to add services. Maybe we only have content. Maybe we want to add services. Maybe we want to have a community. So just a simple framework you can work with. So now we're going to put it all together. So this is basically the table from the first exercise, and then, really figuring out which of your capabilities map to the target audiences, strategic priorities and main objectives, the challenges, what helps them overcome those challenges, which then helps you determine which of your capabilities you want to highlight. So here, what we would do is we can do this exercise again with the math program Number Heroes. But basically, you'll see in this exercise, this could get really granular if you're going by decision maker, by implementer, by end user, and you're talking about detailed features within your offer, and that's okay. This is where you start to list like all of those ingredients that we saw in the Trader Joe's box. This is where you start to list, any sort of like technical specs. That's where you can kind of figure out your capabilities and which ones you want to talk about based on the audience and their challenges and what they're trying to achieve. So Carrie, let's take a look at how you put this all together for Number Heroes. So I worked with Carrie on this. Let's pretend that we've been working together on this. She did the first part of the exercise, and I'm helping her pull it all together. So what we are now able to map are focused on the decision maker, the principal. We know their main objectives are building these strong foundational skills, et cetera. What's standing in the way? Varied levels of math proficiency, low motivation, things like that. And then what features and capabilities help them overcome these challenges? So while in the packaging table, there may have been more things listed, she's choosing to highlight only the things that really align with this specific individual or roles, priorities, and the challenges. So evidence of efficacy is going to help them kind of reassure them about one of their challenges. Student-led learning and driving engagement is going to help them with overcome one of their challenges, or overcome some potential concern that there's low student motivation. Standards aligned instructional activities and teacher training are also going to help address some of those challenges. So instead of listing everything, it's choosing which components really map to the challenges and the strategic priorities, because ultimately this is going to help inform how you talk to your target audience through different marketing and communication efforts.
And is it right, Julie, that this might be different if I was talking to a teacher
or
to a different stakeholder?
Absolutely. Yep. And so yeah, here we're only focused on, this example is only for the decision maker row, but if we were to add implementer, if we were to add end user, there would be different capabilities, especially if, an end user is a student, there would definitely be different capabilities for a student, or you would describe some of these capabilities differently for students. Similarly for a teacher, we'd highlight the teacher training, the student-led learning drives engagement. So, some of these things can also be repeated. And then that audience-centric and that market-first mindset will help you determine then, all right, if I'm going to be talking to decision makers, these are the things I want to highlight. If I'm going to be talking to somebody about the value for students, these are the things I want to highlight. So yes, that's a great point. So now we're going to take all that and develop value-based positioning. And so here is a standard Mad Lib style template for completing a positioning statement. And you may have seen this before. And you can find templates like this in anywhere you research. And if you're kind of following along in your workbook and you're doing this with your own innovation and you're not following along with our kind of fictitious Number Heroes example, feel free to try to do this yourself. And I'm going to talk through how to do this and the methodology, but feel free to take this template and try to build your own positioning statement if you don't already have one. Because this is a great template that works at the product level, at the feature level, even at the overarching organization level. If you are part of a company or if you are part of a nonprofit, this could potentially even work at the larger brand level. So, and I'll just read it to you. So this is kind of the Mad Libs. You would say and you'd insert your product or service, helps who, your target audience, and then address a specific problem or use case by what is the key benefit and outcome, so they can accomplish what they're trying to accomplish and what your offering uniquely addresses. So hopefully you've seen how this kind of relies on all of those steps that we've gone through before to get here. We had to know about our target audience. We had to know about our offer and how we package it. We had to know about what makes our offer unique, and that's where the competitive insights come in. And then we put it all together in this very audience-centric approach. So Carrie, let's take a look at what this would look like if we used it for Number Heroes.
All right, so for Number Heroes, our supplemental math program helps K-3 teachers deliver engaging, differentiated math instruction by providing a gamified student-led learning experience so they can offer evidence-based, standards-aligned math instruction without needing additional teachers in the classroom.
This is great. So, there's just another kind of Mad Lib style template. And then an end goal could be a positioning statement or an artifact that you use to then inform your messaging. And so this is just like an example of if you are doing kind of the marketing and outreach on your own, this could be for your own use. If you are working with somebody helping with marketing or outreach, you could give them this document and it says, this is who our target market is. This is the positioning statement. And this really helps inform all of the external components that we're going to talk about next. And one thing I'll note here, wordsmithing is always something that can happen at the positioning level too. So this is kind of version 1, but somebody on Carrie's team may look at this and be like, I think those are too many words, or we don't want to highlight this, this particular thing. We want to highlight this other thing. And so this is a starting point. It can always evolve and change, and it should evolve and change if you have enhancements to your innovation or product, or if the market changes. So this is something that, it shouldn't change too often, but when there are big shifts, like on your end or on the market's end or your target audience's end, then, it's always worth revisiting. So now I'll speak briefly about how positioning leads to messaging. So, and I should have pointed this out earlier. So we're kind of following along the 7 steps on the bottom here. So we've done market first mindset, value-based positioning. Now we're to the craft your messaging step. And from positioning to messaging, these are just some core concepts I want to introduce. So positioning, value proposition, and messaging all fit together. And the way to think about it is that the value-based positioning is what sets you apart, how you position your offer in the mind of your target audience. A great example of this from a consumer perspective is Volvo. The Volvo car is known to many, or at least since I was a kid, it was known as the safe car. So that was their positioning. So positioning is really about how your target audience thinks of your innovation and your offer. The value proposition is then, okay, what's in it for them? What will they gain by choosing your offering? What benefits can they expect? And then the positioning and value proposition feed the messaging. And messaging is what becomes externally facing. That is the delivery of the story about your offer. It's how you bring your positioning and value proposition to life in all your communications. This includes advertising, verbal presentations, social media, website user interactions, and beyond. So for each offering, these 3 elements can work together. Positioning, the value that establishes your unique place in the minds of your target audience, the value proposition, clarifying the direct benefit to them, informing your messaging. So now we're going to shift gears to just one more example on AI insights for positioning and messaging, and then we will get to external execution. So I know I've covered a lot, and all of this, as we said before, is available in the playbook, and you can follow along again, on your own. But one thing I would love to point out here, and this is something I will say is I can, speak to personally. taking positioning, once you've done the work for the value-based positioning, taking that positioning to inform messaging for different channels, AI can be a tremendous help for that because the input is based on the work that you did. So when your input is a positioning statement that you know reflects what makes you unique in the minds of your target audience and what's in it for them, then you can ask AI to collaborate with you on developing messaging for different channels. So website headlines, email copy, digital ads, LinkedIn posts, and this is where it can be an incredible time saver. So again, and this is something just personally, like this has saved hours in workflows that I've been doing for quite a while by, taking the great work building out a positioning statement to then help build out messaging and externally facing content, which of course would always need to be modified and have your own voice, added at the end. All right, so now we're going to go to external execution. And this is the, kind of the step where we bring it all together and figure out how we're going to get our message to the market. And here I like to talk about audience-centric external activation. So we're getting into the blue if you're following along in the bottom. So we're now ready to figure out how do we externally tell our target audience about our offer and help them figure out how they can learn more and potentially decide to implement it. But that market first mindset is still present when we get into this external phase because it was important in internal planning. So it also helps ensure an audience-centric approach to external activation. And what we're going to talk about today is defining your channel strategy, how to activate awareness with hopefully an easy to use template and framework, and then how do you also use those templates and frameworks to drive interest and decision. And I'll talk a little bit about awareness and interest and decision. Awareness is really when they're first getting to know you, when they're first, learning about you and your offer. And that's also considered top of funnel, like a marketing funnel. And then when they're ready to learn more, like maybe they want to see a demo, maybe they want to try it out themselves, maybe they want to know what it's like to implement it, maybe they want to talk to some of your advocates. That's really when they're entering the interest and decision phase. So there are different messages that you may want to deliver depending on where your target audience is in their journey or your marketing funnel. So I know I mentioned the term channel before, and I'll just pause for a minute and define this. Like, what do we mean by channels? And really, a channel strategy is your plan for how you're going to share your information about your innovation with your target audience. It's about choosing the best places or ways, like websites, community centers, events, word of mouth, to reach the people who might want your offer. So a multi-channel marketing strategy means sharing your innovation in several different places at the same time. So if you think about it, like if you think about something that you've learned about recently and you try to remember all the places where you heard about it, it's likely that you heard about it in, 2 or 3. Like maybe you got an email, maybe you saw a digital ad, maybe somebody told you about it at a conference, maybe you saw a print ad, maybe you went to their website or maybe somebody that you work with told you about it. So that's multi-channel. It's figuring out how do we get the word out because it's a noisy world out there. How do we get the word out to get our offer in the minds and hearts of our target audience? So now we're going to do 2 more activities, and Carrie, chime in at any point. These last few are templates that I've used over the years that I've found to be really helpful in figuring out what our plan should be with a lean team and how to do that in a focused way with this market first mindset, running across throughout. So the first activity is what I call a go-to-market channel review or GTM channel review. And again, this worksheet is I know it's probably hard to see on the screen. This is available in the playbook, but some guiding questions are to ask yourself, what channels do we already have available to share information about our offer? What channels would we like to invest in? What channels do we not need to invest in? So this is just another way to just kind of do a quick review of what do we have and how would we want to use it. So I've kind of zoomed in on this just to break it down a little bit more. It's a closer look at how you can use this. You'll see that the channels are grouped into a few categories: owned media, earned media, paid media, and then community and sales/BD. BD stands for business development. So owned media, those are the channels that you own, like your website, your emails, your case studies. Those are the things that nobody else can claim or edit. Those are yours, and you control those. Earned media, this is the coverage and advocacy about your product or innovation in other channels, like articles, podcasts, research. If you get invited to speak on somebody's podcast, that's earned media. If you get referenced in somebody's article, that's earned media. It's harder to get, so when you do get it, it's really valuable to share out with your network. Just like it's described, you have to earn it to get it. And then paid media, these are the channels that you pay for, like a paid event, an industry event, or advertising. So you can take this template, identify what channels you already have, which ones you may want to invest in, which ones are not relevant. And some might wonder, well, if I don't have any of these things, or if I don't have all these things, which ones should I start with? What should I prioritize? And I would recommend number one should be starting with owned, and starting with a website, an email, and one social channel, because you want people to understand how you want them to find out more about you. And the best way to do that is on a website, and you want to be able to tell them more about you. And you can do that through email and social. Then if you have budget to do so and you want to test out a paid event, then I would recommend testing an industry event if there are industry events that your target audience typically attends. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how to do that in the next little bit. So now it's time to bring it all together, the alignment and the activate phase. And so you'll see here as we're going along the bottom, these are the last kind of two chevrons, activating awareness and driving interest and decision. It's how you bring it all together. And I have 5 tips when you think about this. 1, annual planning. So think about your go-to-market strategy and your plan in kind of an annual view, and have quarterly focus areas. Then when you have quarterly focus areas, pick 1 or 2 target audiences per quarter. So you wouldn't, going back to the math example, you wouldn't target principals and curriculum leaders and teachers and superintendents in 1 quarter. That would be too many, and you would be spread too thin, and messages could get diluted. So, pick 1 or 2 target audiences, maybe just start with 1, and then prioritize which channels you're going to try to reach those audiences on during that quarter. And then try to have some sort of main event or call to action. And those main events or call to action could be you having a booth at a conference, could be you hosting a webinar like this. It could be you serving on a panel at somebody else's event, or it could be, a contest if you're, targeting teachers and people that might want to be actively engaged in a content. So the main event doesn't have to be an actual event that you go to and attend and have a booth, but it could be. And then make sure all of your messaging is aligned to all of those things up above. So based on the work that you've done in the beginning, you've already identified your target audience. You know what matters to them. You know how your offering aligns with their needs. You've already crafted compelling messaging, and you've identified the channels you have available. So filling this out should not be too difficult, because you have all the inputs you need to figure out how to prioritize on a quarterly and an annual basis. And this is really what I call the bringing it all together phase. So here's an activity where you can, just think through the quarterly focus by audience first. And, I'll say that this could potentially feel overwhelming if you're trying to do this alone or with a really lean team. It could feel overwhelming. And so this type of framework and this type of template really helps figure out how to focus. And that, that recommendation of aligning around a theme or 2 each quarter to streamline efforts is really, really important if you are trying to scale without a lot of resources. So this template helps drive that focus, and you can ask important questions like, all right, and what matters to my target audience each quarter? What industry events might they go to each quarter? And, to elaborate on this, like, why focus on 1 audience per quarter? Even if you have multiple target audiences, focusing on 1 will help you align all those marketing efforts and ensure your messaging doesn't, get spread too thin. And starting with an industry event it's a helpful way to start, especially in education, because there are a lot of industry events that likely decision makers and implementers will attend, and knowing which events when those events happen during the year are helpful, because that could help you figure out which quarter you want to prioritize. So for example, Carrie, if we think about number heroes, let's think about Q2. Would you think of an industry event? Can you think of an industry event in Q2 that a lot of people representing your target audience would attend?
Sure. So coming up next week, we have the ISTE combined with ASCD conference, which draws a lot of practitioners, especially with ISTE, those who are interested in ed tech.
Great. And so here's a great example of how we could build out that one row. Q2 is April through June. The role of decision makers are principals, and the theme, and the industry event is over here on the right, the main event, ISTE, ASCD, and so if Carrie's making her go-to-market plan, she's going, and ISTE is her Q2 priority. She now knows what themes to focus on in all of her messaging and kind of channel promotion. She's going to focus on assessing proficiency and growth. She's going to focus on planning for the next school year. And she can use the event as a place to say, come meet with me here. And she can also use the event as a way to follow up and continue to engage that target audience. So this is an example of picking that main event and then kind of rallying all your resources around that. So now with Q2 prioritized, you can look at the other quarters through the lens of seasonality. So thinking about what's top of mind for your target audience at different times of year. Like we know that in the summertime, your target audience may not be in buildings and they may not be checking their work email, but the fall and the spring may be better times to try to reach them with specific messages. And so here's an example of what an annual plan for the Number Heroes product could look like. So as we already saw, we already built out the decision maker one in Q2, April through June, focused on principals. But in Q1, maybe we focus on the math coordinator. And the theme there is professional development and coaching. And maybe the main event is a webinar that Carrie and her team host. And then in Q3, in kind of late summer, early fall, back to school season, we might want to target implementers, teachers. And we might want to have another webinar focused on best practices and having our superhero teachers in our community advocate for us. And then in Q4, you can have another one. So this is just to illustrate these quarterly themes. And this is really how we put it all together. So during our time together, we've gone from identifying your target audience, having a market first mindset at the outset, keeping that through all of these stages and phases, and then bringing us all the way to being able to map out a quarterly plan with a target audience per quarter, with a potential main event that you host or that you attend. And then that helps inform what themes and what messages you want to get out to your target audience. And then you also know what channels you have available because of the exercise earlier. So we've really put all this together. And so hopefully by now you can see this step-by-step approach, and you know that these resources are available on the Learn Toolkit. And then you can really try this yourself. And hopefully this makes it accessible and easy to follow, and really helps you get your innovation into the hands of your target audience faster, so you can have greater reach and impact.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Julie for lending your expertise today. I learned so much every time I talk to you. So I'm glad we had a little bit of an audience who got some benefit too here today. So some of my takeaways from this session, just bringing that market first mindset to everything we do, and using it across your entire go-to-market strategy to inform, what is that, social media post you're going to make today, always going back to that. Not skimping on internal planning, really thinking through who's your audience, their values, their challenges, how's your product position, how's it different, and then crafting that messaging that addresses all that. And then the last piece is just that we've covered a lot today, and there's a wealth of information and resources that you can use to try this, as Julie just mentioned. And so for next steps, we just recommend a couple things. I always think after a webinar like this, just keep the momentum going. Take one thing maybe you learned today, or one thing that you were interested in looking into, and look into it in the next week and think about how you can start or to cultivate or enhance your already market first mindset. You can access the resources, the templates, the AI prompts on our website. And we'll also be at the ISTE Expo Hall next week. So if you are joining that conference, please come say hello. And we can always help walk you through some of our resources and answer questions. So I just want to close by thanking you all so much for spending the last hour with us. And we'd love to keep engaging with you all. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. So just to close this out, all of the resources can be found here on the website, learntoscale.org. And we hope you take action on those recommended next steps.